Hello, I'm Una Alexander, and if we haven't met before, I've been working with children and families for the past 28 years, and I'm the radically loving parenting mentor who helps you radically love your child to happiness and naturally great behavior. And this week I'm talking about how we can help children with their back to school worries, because here in UK, we're going back to school in a week today. And so I thought this would be helpful. So there are 3 steps today. The first one is to do with ourselves. And excuse, there is a slight rushing noise. I'm having trouble with my computer batteries. Hopefully I'll have sorted that out by this time next week. First one is about ourselves. The second one is to do with talking about feelings, conversations about feelings. And the third one is to do with practical steps we can do to create predictability and safety. So the first one, ourselves. So grounded, well-regulated adults is really the first step to a grounded, well-regulated child. Our feelings, they just rub off on our children. We know this through the science of mirror neurons now, that children just, and we can feel it, we can see it in our, in our day-to-day experience, that children follow us. They follow and take their cue from the way we're showing up. So there's that. And also when we're grounded and well regulated, we show up in a different way. We're available for connection. And connection is the key to helping children with anxiety. When we're really connected, feelings, difficult feelings tend to diminish. I was on a call, a group call last week with some of my mums, in inverted commas, my mums, and one of them had flagged up an issue with her son, that he was washing his hands so frantically that they were actually getting quite raw. And so I went somewhere in the middle of this call to talk to her about this, but then she said, no, actually, it's fine. I've got it. I know what's happened. I just got very busy again, she said. I've been rushing onto Zoom calls, and I imagine he's been just feeling a little bit lost. I know what to do. I just need to slow down and be there for him more. And I love this mum's clarity. I loved her wisdom too. So let's move on to step number 2, which is to do with conversations around feelings. When children feel that their tricky feelings are embraced, that they're kind of understood and supported by us as parents, this is just a huge, huge help, and it helps these feelings to dissipate. And you might be just thinking, yeah, but my child just doesn't like talking about feelings. And anytime I initiate that kind of conversation, they just shut down and won't talk about it. Now, I hear this a lot. I can understand it if it's happening, and it might have one of 2 reasons. Because when I see parents having this kind of conversation with children, I see them go into one of 2 modes. The first one is needy mode, where we go, tell me what's wrong. I need you to tell me so that I can help you. Okay, so we're in needy mode. Or we go into fix it mode, where we say, don't worry, it's fine, you're going to be fine. And neither of these modes are terribly inviting to a conversation around feeling. So what does invite a conversation around feeling? Well, there are so many ways, but I'm going to give you an example. And it starts with curiosity about what our children might be feeling. Not trying to fix them, not needing to know, but becoming curious and saying something like, I've been wondering how you might be feeling about going back to school next week. Maybe it feels very funny to be suddenly seeing so many people when it's only just been us for so long, us in the family. And maybe you're wondering about how things are going to be. You don't even know if you're going to have to wear masks or not, and so on. And keep having that kind of conversation where you're gently inquiring, you're being curious, and you've thought about it beforehand, how they might be feeling. And sometimes children will get stuck in a loop of anxious thinking. So I'd like to say one give you one more way into a conversation like this. If your child complains that they're of intrusive thoughts, that thoughts won't go away, they won't leave them alone. And this is what you can do. This happened to my son a couple of weeks ago. He's working on a project and he was having these kind of obsessive thoughts around it. And I said, well, I can help you. He's 16, by the way. And he didn't respond, so I took that as a green light. I said, I'd need to ask you quite a number of questions. And then he said, no, I don't want that. I said, but they're not very personal questions. So again, he fell silent, so I took that as another green light and started asking him. I said, when you're stuck in that loop, where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your head, your throat, shoulders, so on? And he said, after thinking about it, reflecting, looking inside, he said, I feel it in my shoulders. And so I said, well, how big is that feeling? And what shape is it? How heavy is it? And what color is it? And as I asked each of these questions, there was a silence as he went to look, so to speak. And after I'd asked a number of these questions, he then suddenly switched topic and changed the conversation. And I took it that, the work was done. And in fact, he went on to talk about something completely different. So yeah, it had worked. And he didn't bring it up again. So that's a little, another way into conversations about feelings. So now the third step, how can we create security in practical ways? So there are three parts to this. And the first one is that we can, when we're talking about what's coming up in the week, in this coming week, we talk about what we do know. We do know you're going back to school on Monday, if you do know that, right? And don't focus on what you don't know yet, and just say you'll figure that out as you go along. Best not to talk about any anxieties you might have, because that won't help. So focus on the certainty, what you do know, what's happening this week, what's happening on the weekend, and what you do know about going back to school. Number two is create predictability where you can. You can create predictability by having a day by having a rhythm that repeats itself day after day, and doing similar things, same things at a similar time each day. And also, if something different is coming up, say you're going to a Zoom call at 4 o'clock, tell your child that, at breakfast time, so that they can prepare. So create predictability by doing things at a similar time each day, and by flagging things up in advance and letting them know. And the third thing you might like to consider is to do some practice with going back to school. You can just literally do, excuse me, do the things that you normally do to get ready for school as a kind of practice in order to make them familiar again. Like you can get into the uniform, see how it feels again, make the lunch. You can even do a dry run of the journey to school, so that when next Monday you're going to school and actually going through the school gates, then you, some of the kind of the back to school routine is more familiar again. Oh, I'm having a bit of trouble with my frog in my throat. I'm going to have a little bit of mint essential oil. That tends to help. So start with yourself, conversations about feelings, and practical steps. And all these will help in the lead up to going back to school if your child is anxious. And finally, I'd like to recommend my a meditation that's available on my website that will help you. It will help your relationship with your child, even if you feel your relationship is good. It will help you connect to your child in such a way that you create that kind of deep connection and reassurance that comes from being connected. And it's called Reset Your Relationship with Your Child. And the URL is unaalexander.co.uk/reset. And so that would be my very final recommendation, if you like, in addressing these back to school worries, if you haven't already downloaded it, of course. So lots of love to you. Bye.